Your client meetings are auditions for a part that's already been cast. Forrester Research studied over 11,000 buyers. 92% already had someone in mind before they started evaluating. The pre-contact favorite wins 80% of the time. That means your discovery call isn't a first impression, it's a confirmation hearing. The prospect already knows who they want, they're just checking the box. But here's what makes this worse than it sounds. There's a second study, completely separate, that explains why this is happening. And when you put the two together, it reveals something about how clients actually choose that almost nobody in this space is talking about. I'm going to show you exactly when the real decision happens, what clients are actually evaluating, and the one thing that puts you on the shortlist before anyone picks up the phone. Let me give you the full picture. Layer this on top of the 2026 Edelman Trust Barometer. 34,000 respondents across 28 countries. 70% of people are now unwilling to trust someone who doesn't share their values or their worldview. Trust is contracting. People are retreating into smaller circles. And a Harvard Business School professor who advises Edelman on this research says, trust is built from the inside out. It can't be marketed into existence. But here's the piece most people aren't connecting. Those two studies, Forrester and Edelman, are describing the same thing from different angles. Edelman explains why people only trust what's familiar. Forrester shows what happens because of it. They pick the familiar expert before the process even starts. And nobody is telling independent consultants and advisors what that actually means for their practice. Here's what it means for you. If you're a consultant, a coach, or a financial advisor, a speaker, anyone who sells their expertise for a living, the data says your prospect is not making their decision in the meeting. They're making it weeks or months before, based on who showed up in their world, based on who they'd already heard of, based on who felt familiar before they had a need. So that discovery call you spent an hour prepping for, if you weren't already on their radar before they started looking, you were never really in the running. You were the comparison, the due diligence, the person they talked to so they could feel good about the choice they already made. Sound familiar? You've had those calls, the ones where everything went well, great conversation, real connection, and then they ghosted or went with someone else and you couldn't figure out why. Now you know. The decision happened before the call. You were auditioning for a part that was already cast. I want to tell you about a couple of fee-only advisor partners in the Pacific Northwest. I'll call them Jay and Lance. 18 months ago, their close rate on discovery calls started slipping. Same quality work, same happy clients, same referrals coming in. Something had just shifted. Keep that in mind. What I've been studying is something I call the invisible shortlist. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. There are 3 parts to how clients actually choose who they work with, and almost none of it happens where you think it does. The first part is the shortlist window. This is the period before a prospect has a defined need, before they're shopping. During this window, they're passively absorbing information, reading, scrolling, noticing, and they're forming a mental list of who they'd like to call if they ever needed help. You either get on the list or you don't. There's no second chance once the need becomes urgent. The second part is the verification phase. This is what most people think is the decision, but it's not. This is where the prospect checks their shortlist against evidence. They Google you. They look for published work. They ask around. They're not deciding, they're confirming. If you're on the shortlist and the evidence backs it up, you win. If you're not on the shortlist, no amount of evidence matters because they never searched for you in the first place. The third part is the meeting. And this is where Jay and Lance's entire strategy was focused. They were brilliant in the room, thoughtful, prepared, genuinely cared. But by the time the prospect sat down, the competition was already over. The meeting was the final stamp on the decision that happened during the first 2 phases. See the problem? Most consultants and advisors pour 90% of their energy into the meeting. The research says the first part, the shortlist window, is where the game is won or lost. And when you realize that, the question becomes a little uncomfortable. What exactly are you doing to get on the invisible shortlist? If I could boil it all down to one sentence, it's this. People don't pick the best expert. They pick the expert they already knew about. That changes everything about how you should be building your practice right now. So what happened to Jay and Lance? One day a prospect sat across from them, said all the right things, seemed ready to move forward, and then hired someone else. Lance asked the referral source what happened. The answer? The prospect had Googled both firms. The other one had a book, a named and branded retirement planning methodology, 3 years of visible thought leadership. Jay and Lance had a website with a couple of headshots and a services page. Same credentials, comparable experience, but one of them had visible evidence of authority and the other didn't. Jay and Lance weren't outworked, they were outpositioned. So they did something about it. They published a book built around their proprietary planning framework, gave it a name, started putting their thinking where prospects could find it during that first window, before the need was urgent. Within 6 months, referred prospects were showing up to discovery calls having already read their framework. Close rates came back up, then exceeded what it was before. Same work, same expertise, different evidence. So what actually works? The consultants and advisors I've seen navigate this successfully all have one thing in common. They've built something tangible that does the positioning before the conversation starts. That's the difference between the experts getting commoditized and the ones becoming the only choice in their space. It's not talent, it's not credentials, it's whether you've built something that makes you the known authority before the client starts shopping. The question most people have at this point is, okay, I get it. I need to be on that shortlist before the prospect is ready. But how do I actually build that asset? How do I take everything I know and turn it into something a client can find, read, and then say, this is my person before we ever get on a call? Because that's the real shift. The ones who win from here aren't running better meetings. They have something working for them around the clock, building trust while they're not in the room. It's exactly what I walk through in the next video. It covers the process we use to take what you already know, everything in your head right now, and build a book around it in 90 days without staring at a blank page. It also explains why we back the whole thing with an ROI guarantee, because what this has to do for your practice is concrete. If your energy is going into the meeting right now and you're not on the shortlist yet, that next video is the one you need. Watch it next.